What is going on, Stallions? AK40 Kevin here in the gamer heaven. Today we have yet another Raspberry Pi project. This time, we're not slapping a single board computer into a case like this to build the ultimate retro console. We already did that. If you missed that journey, that video is linked in the description below. Today we're building a functional tablet from a kit. Thing works pretty good. There are a couple of setbacks or drawbacks, if you will, but all in all, this is a great DIY project, especially if you like to tinker with Raspberry Pi single board computers and you plan on doing some kind of programming or home automation with this tablet. I did source the Raspberry Pi and SD card out of pocket. However, this tablet kit was sent out for review. Although, as you're going to hear throughout the video, I'm not going to take it easy on this company. Anytime I get sent something for review, if there are any cons or areas of improvement for their next version or iteration, you're going to hear about it. Let's get this thing. Razzle Dazzle Pad 3 over here. The screen is a 10.1 inch IPS with a resolution of 1280 by 800 or 800p, an aspect ratio of 16 by 10, and a 10-point multi-touch, so you can technically have all 10 of your fingers touching at once. Besides your 3.5mm headphone jack, on the same side you'll also have 3 USB 3.0, so one less than standard, and one Ethernet port, as well as a GPIO slot and one CSI port. Now you have a component list that does break down everything that you should have in this kit. Have a little bit of foam here, keeping your product safe for its voyage. You have the actual Raspad wrapped in this plastic. This is a rather thick or bulky design, as it is a wedge shape, and it does have to encase a lot of components, including an actual single board computer. On the right hand side, you are going to have your 3 green LED lights that do indicate the battery life, and you are going to have plus and minus buttons for both the brightness and the volume, as well as a power on and off button, and a slot for your micro SD card. On the other side, you are going to have an Ethernet port, 3 USB 3.0 ports, a full-size HDMI port, so you can utilize both the 10.1 inch IPS display as well as a second monitor display. 3.5mm headphone jack so you don't disrupt your spouse when you're playing some Candy Crush, and a power port because yeah, you gotta keep it charged. You do have 4 rubberized feet on the bottom to keep it from slip sliding around your desk, and you do have a CSI port on the bottom, as well as some venting here to dissipate heat. Feeling kind of cute, might hit you with a time lapse, I don't even know. All of your extension cables, which are basically just jumpers to go from your Raspberry Pi single board computer to the outside of the tablet, obviously. Your fan, which I have heard from another reviewer, Drew Talks, he did mention that this is a rather noisy fan, and he would personally recommend upgrading to an aftermarket option. Oh, that's nice. A magnetized Phillips head screwdriver, which you are going to need to take the 5 Phillips head screws off the bottom to get the case apart. This is the ribbon cable and the extension for the micro SD card slot, so you can actually slide your SD card slot on the outside of the tablet, not have to take it apart to get to your single board computer. And this little chip is to add accelerometer functionality, so you can actually tilt your screen from landscape to portrait, or tilt it when you're playing a racing game. There's a little bit of a gap here where you can slide ribbon cables through here if you're doing a specific build where you do need to have your GPIO pins. Now, generally, I wouldn't be resting this thing face down, screen down. However, I have not removed the protective film yet, so it's not collecting any scrapes or scratches on my desk. Now, this is a magnetized screwdriver, which I greatly appreciate. So not a whole lot going on this little bottom shell. However, this is where all of your hardware is. You have your primary or motherboard over here with heat sinks already pre-installed. All in all, these capacitors look relatively high quality. All the soldering looks good. And this is a really neat little design. You know, not the most practical when it comes to a portable gaming solution. I am going to go over what applications or uses I do think that this particular product is good for. Spoiler alert, I mean, if you're just trying to do some emulation, some portable gaming on the go, this is not your best bet. There are cheaper, smaller, more portable options out there. But there are some things that this particular project can do, such as home security automation and smart home control, that I think is really cool. Not to mention if you're trying to do some basic programming or you're trying to do some kind of a DIY home project, this will work out really good for you. Now, along the top, we do have our battery suite, which is 3 separate cylindrical batteries, which will give you between 3 to 5 hours of power. You have 2 stereo speakers. You do have threaded holes right here. Then you have sort of a daughter board over here, which is going to have your jumper for the SD card slot. And then you do have a couple of heat sinks include for your Pi4, which is very nice, as obviously you want to be able to dissipate heat when you're doing things like gaming, emulation, or even some productivity work where you might be throttling back in performance. You're probably wondering, why does this kit use both of the mini HDMI cables? The first one here is to actually get a display on the actual touchscreen of the tablet, and the second one powers, or I should say, gives a video pass-through to the HDMI port. So if you're going to be casting to a second monitor or TV, you can do that. These do feel a little bit tight. I wish these cables were a little bit more flexible. I do feel like it's putting a lot of pressure on these HDMI ports, which again are just soldered on the board. But I mean, it looks good and everything. Everything looks professional with this kit, but I just feel like these are putting a lot of pressure on these HDMI ports, in my opinion. And it looks like technically you only need one USB 3.0 jumper connected to one of the two HDMI 3.0 ports here, and that is going to get USB 3.0 capability to these three ports just off of this one jumper. All right, so the only thing I did off camera was connect this USB-C cable, and this is how you're actually going to get power. And then I did also install the three heat sinks, one over the processor, one over the RAM, and one over the USB module. These do also have thermal pads underneath them. Now this little chip here is an accelerometer shim, and this is going to allow you to have accelerometer functionality. Now, I am gonna install the optional fan, as these units do get rather hot, especially during some intense emulation, maybe some N64 or Dreamcast, some of the more intensive consoles to emulate. To install this, you want this sticker or logo facing upwards, and you are gonna install it right here. Just drops right into place, and you are gonna use these screws to tie it down. Just like that. And that's it. We're all set up. You can do this in literally 5 minutes. There's no soldering required. This is very simple. It's basically just jumper cables from USB-C and the two HDMI ports and the USB ports and the Ethernet, slapping on a couple of heat sinks, connecting this little ribbon cable. It's a pretty simple build. One thing you want to make sure of, I just made this mistake myself right now, there is a screw port right here that you want to make sure this USB cable is not interfering with, which it currently is. So we need to make sure that it is up and out of the way. So I was having some issues booting the Raspad 3, and it is completely operator error on my part. This chip right here, which is for the accelerometer, if it'll go ahead and autofocus, I had that flipped the other way around, and there is no specifics in the instruction manual for how it should look, but it needs to look like this. So not the logo, not the labeled side. That side is going down. That side is facing down, and the side with this little chip upwards on these first 6 pins on the GPIO ports. Also, another quick note or sidebar, anytime you are going to be removing or reinstalling the back plate, you want to make sure that you do remove the SD card first, because the cover actually goes over the outside of the SD card. Have you guys heard the song Island Boy that's trending right now that kind of blew up and went viral? It's super stupid, but it's really catchy and I can't get it out of my head. Probably because I'm an island boy. I'm an island boy. I put my vest on you. I bet you didn't expect to get that sprinkled in this video, did you? No, because I didn't expect to put it in there. It came off the cusp, so to speak, off the creative shaft, if you will. All right, so you're gonna need an operating system or an OS in order to actually get this tablet to function. Technically, you have a couple of options, but in reality, if you're a casual electronics consumer and not a tinkerer, not the kind of person that generally would buy a tablet kit to put together a Raspberry Pi, maybe you bought this because you're like, well, I just want to chuck this tablet together and have a hunky-dory good time. You're not going to want to mess around with the other options that I will quickly breeze over. One of those options, and probably the best operating system for this, would be Android, but unfortunately Raspberry Pi doesn't officially support a right out of the box plug and play, click go and it runs. Android builds, there's 3 or 4 different options or venues to get Android running. However, you're most likely going to use Imteria, all 3 DP, and all of these require some tweaking and finagling. So for standard normies, what you're going to do is go to this website right here. This will be linked in the description below for ease of use. You're going to download this launcher, which, as you can see, I do have down here on my taskbar. This is super convenient. Back in the day, when you wanted to get an operating system such as RetroArch or RetroPie or Batocera onto a Pi single board computer, download an image file, WinZip or some kind of an unzipping software, then get Balena Etcher, which allowed you to etch image files onto an SD card, considering that SD card is actually going to be like the full-on like operating system, pain in the chocolate starfish. Now, the Raspberry Pi Foundation has finally made this official launcher right here, which is super, super convenient. So what you're going to do is plug in a little SD card adapter, unless your PC has a micro SD card slot, but a lot of them don't nowadays. It does also support full-size SD cards, so you can use this for your photography style cameras and whatnot to get your footage into your PC for that YouTube channel that you're about to start. I think this one was about $9 or $10 on Amazon. Again, this is linked in the description below, as everything is that I mentioned in this video, including the actual Pi kit itself. From this angle, it really does look like I have a black eye. I don't, like in real life, IRL. I haven't been socked in the eye, but it's the lighting. It really does look like somebody cracked me one. I would just buck up and tell you guys if I had a black eye, but I haven't been in a fist fight since high school, and I'm 32 years old, so do the math. It's been a while since I've had a human fist hit me in the head. I mean, of course, besides when I'm sparring, I do box, but other than that, okay, off topic, Kevin, nobody cares. Get back to it. So you're gonna plug this into your PC. Now, you don't really need a huge amount of storage. In fact, you can even go as small as 16 gigabytes, because if you're just installing Pi OS, that's it, just the operating system. You're not gonna be chucking a bunch of games on there. You just want this thing to work as a productivity tablet. Well, by productivity, I mean maybe watching Netflix or YouTube. You're not going to be doing any video editing or anything crazy like that. I mean, it's like a $60 single board computer. But anyway, you're going to choose your operating system over here. And like I said, this is incredibly convenient how they've done this. You have multiple options here, but what you're going to do is right here, top dead center, Pi OS 32-bit. It says it's recommended for a reason. Just click it, choose storage. Well, this isn't plugged in right now, but you know what? I'll give you the full experience. So as soon as I plug that in, you can see it is now registering. That's a big boy. That is a 256 gig. I usually use that for full-on retro Pi builds with like 60 retro consoles and like 30,000 games with a full Kodi suite for video streaming and a bunch of other completely legal content. But once you've chosen the operating system and the storage, you're going to hit write, and it is literally going to format the disk. It's going to write it. It's going to seal it. It's going to do a quick QC or quality check to make sure that it will run, and that's it. So instead of having to have like 3 separate software programs, this one launcher does it all. Very convenient. Now, what's not convenient is the way that the Raspad organization, or SunFounder over here, wants you to go about activating the virtual keyboard, activating rotation on the screen. You might think just because you put that chip in there that you're going to be able to rotate the screen like the good Lord intended. No, sir. And in order to get right-click functionality on the Raspad, which is really cool, actually, double tapping, that works as right-click, or maybe it's 2-finger tap, I don't remember, or maybe it's holding down. It's a different input, will be your right-click, so to speak. And keep in mind, you can't always plug in a mouse and keyboard if you want, but you shouldn't have to do that. It's a tablet. You should be using the touch interface. It's not very convenient because there is no virtual keyboard activated by stock. You have to follow a lovely process right here, which it's not really that bad. Basically, what you're going to do is pull open this website right here on your actual Pi, and then you're going to pop this into your actual terminal that allows you to run code or run scripts, run commands, if you will, directly into the operating system. So this button right here that I'm hovering over, you're going to paste this into there, and then you're going to hit enter. I've tried tapping run and nothing happens. Copy this and paste it in there, and that will activate the virtual keyboard. Same thing with being able to rotate the screen. Same thing with activating the right click functionality. But wow, lots of steps there. You have to copy each one of these individually and paste them into the terminal. All right, so turn the Raspad on. You're going to hold down the power button for around 3 seconds, and you will see these three green LEDs illuminate, letting you know your battery life. You're going to get a quick splash screen. The first time you launch this tablet with Pi OS, you are going to get ran through an initial setup where you select your language and your Wi-Fi network. Go ahead and remove this cover now. A little ASMR for you. So obviously increasing your brightness will make a tremendous difference on your battery life, as you will get between 3 and 5 hours, depending on what you're doing, your brightness level, how loud the speaker is, etc. I will say right off the bat, the touchscreen is incredibly responsive. Very, very good. Very sensitive. You don't have to press very hard. It is a rather noisy fan, and you do also feel some vibration on your fingertips as well, right where the fan is. If that is a big deal for you, you might want to upgrade to a more premium aftermarket fan. So now we run to our first con, or major setback, in my opinion, of this product, and that is the fact that they no longer support their own operating system, Raspad OS. I guess it was having some USB issues, some connectivity issues, some driver problems, so they decided to scrap their software project completely, and now they do recommend that you just run the standard Pi OS. Out of the gate, there is no working keyboard, so you will need to utilize those USB ports on the side and go ahead and plug in a keyboard to type in your Wi-Fi password and to do any kind of web browsing or anything that does require you typing text. And then of course, since this is the first time you're using a new electronics device, you have to update the software to the latest firmware. Hey, that's me. You can see it as an incredibly glossy or reflective screen, which in my opinion, I'm not too fond of because it does show micro scratches, fingerprints, and well, also if you're out in sunlight or even artificial light, like in this room right now, you're basically staring into a mirror, right by the old mouth hole. So what is my final verdict of the Raspad 3? For the Pi4? Well, first of all, naming convention isn't great. They call it the Raspad 3. However, considering people might get a little bit confused thinking that this works with a Raspberry Pi 3, it will not work with anything prior to the 4, which is the current model offered by the Raspberry Pi Foundation. How do I want to do this? Do I want to do just the pros and then just the cons, or am I going to go pro con, because that's kind of how it breaks out. Like every pro has a little bit of a wonky setback to it. Let's do it that way. So the SunFounder Raspad 3 retails for $260 after a $40 coupon that to my knowledge is basically always on the landing page on Amazon. So that's not necessarily cheap. However, the screen quality is insanely good. It actually does get quite bright. However, since it is very, very glossy, in direct sunlight, you're going to see a direct reflection of yourself and the sun and basically even artificial lights like in my room right now. So I wish it had a matte screen. Now you can circumvent that issue by getting yourself some kind of a matte screen protector to stick over there. I think that will help to reduce the glare, considering there actually is a good degree of viewing angles with this. Even off center or off axis, you get a pretty clear image. Also, this does get quite bright. It looks pretty damn bright and vivid. There is also an onboard speaker that does get very loud. It does get a little bit distorted at high volumes. However, you're probably not going to crank it up that loud without popping in a pair of headphones with the included headphone jack over here. I do like the fact that you have all these ports and plugs. You have USB 3.0, an Ethernet port, a full-size HDMI, power port for charging, as well as a 3.5mm headphone jack. However, because of the fact that you do have all these ports on the side, plus it is a wedge design, it is incredibly thick in comparison to any tablet that you would just go out and purchase at the store. That can also be a good thing because you can actually stand it up and then basically just use it like a standing monitor, and the screen will rotate around. It's not doing it right now for some reason, but it usually does rotate around. Maybe I have screen lock on or something, and then either Bluetooth a controller, such as an Xbox or PlayStation controller, or plug in a USB controller to the side of it and get your fix of retro gaming emulation. I would not use it for that purpose personally. Something like this $50 knockoff PS Vita here that I got off Amazon that allows you to upload your own ROMs or ISO files would be a better option for just emulating retro games. Where I think this thing really does shine is, first of all, the DIY factor of it. If you do like tinkering and you do like projects or builds like this, that right there is pretty cool. But the actual functionality of it, I think, would be perfect for a couple of things. One would be home automation, considering the Pi is a great single board for computer to be handling your home network security. So running things like hybrid VPNs and firewalls, and also smart home integration. So maybe have this tablet mounted on a wall to where you can take it off and take it on the go and walk throughout your house, turning on lights or monitoring your security cameras outside. This would be fantastic for that. And also, if you just want a relatively low powered tablet to give to a child, something that will be able to run YouTube Kids and Netflix Kids and stuff like that, care too much about them destroying it because it's not a, $2,000 iPad Pro or anything like that. Granted, between $45 and $85 for the Raspberry Pi, probably about another $20 for the SD card. However, you don't need to worry about a case or power supply because that's all included with this kit, but the kit's $260. So you're looking at about, we'll say like $350. We'll say mid $300, which isn't cheap by any means. And in my opinion, for that price, that is a bit of a stretch for what it can do and the practical applications of this product. Having said that, I think it is a neat kit. I think it has solid build quality. I think it's a neat design. And I do think the screen and speakers are incredibly high quality. I think my biggest gripe or complaint, didn't rotate the screen again, would be the fact that there isn't software to back up the hardware. Your option is to run Pi OS, or Raspbian as it used to be called, which is basically Debian OS that has been built up for the Raspberry Pi. Cool and all if you're going to be using a keyboard, mouse, and a monitor and you're using it as a low-powered desktop rig. But for a tablet, there is touchscreen capability engaged in Pi OS, but it's not great. It's an afterthought. And that's your best option is to run Android. However, that's not fully supported by the Raspberry Pi Foundation, so you have to do a lot of tinkering. It's a pain in the ass, but if you do get it up and running, that is your best option for an operating system with this tablet, as Android is already built for touchscreen interfaces, so bigger icons, you don't have to go through a bunch of menus or subsets. It's not like a desktop layout, it's more cell phone and tablet-like, which makes it good for touch screen integration. So if you're just looking for a good high quality screen that is responsive, bright, vibrant, good viewing angles, good speaker, solid battery life that's accurate to the advertised time of 3 to 5 hours, I was actually getting on the high end of that, this is a great option for you. However, if you're just on the hunt for some cheap on-the-go emulation, like I said, there are cheaper, quicker, and better options for that. But if you're using this for smart home automation, or maybe network security or something, or programming, this is perfect for that. If you did enjoy this video, go ahead and show me by smacking that like button down there. If you want to see more content like this, doing Raspberry Pi builds and a lot of retro gaming, subscribe on YouTube and follow on this Facebook page, and I'll see you guys tomorrow, because I do upload daily. Most of the time. 60% of the time I upload every time. Daily. Fuck.